उन्हें लीड करने की बजाय देश को मिसलीड करने की कोशिश की है। मैं बगैर विलंब के आदरणीय श्री पी चिदम्बरम जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो इस बजट के बारे में कांग्रेस पार्टी की ओर से अपना वक्तव्य आपको देंगे। आदरणीय चिदम्बरम साहब।
Good afternoon to all of you. I have an opening statement which I will read. Copies have been distributed, and then we'll take questions at the end. Budget 2019-20 is an insipid budget. The Finance Minister's speech was an unusually opaque exercise. I ask all of you gathered here, has there ever been a budget speech that does not disclose the total revenue, the total expenditure, the fiscal deficit, the revenue deficit, the additional revenue mobilization, or the financial concessions? Has there ever been a budget speech that does not disclose the allocations to important programs like Maganrega, midday meal scheme, health care, etc., and to vulnerable sections like scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, minorities, women, etc.? We are shocked by this departure from the usual practice. Belying widespread expectations, the FM has given no meaningful relief to any section of the people. On the contrary, the FM has increased customs duties on a large number of goods, protectionist, raised taxes on petrol and diesel, exploitative, and proposed extensive amendments to the Income Tax Act that would increase the tax and compliance burdens on the taxpayer. The budget speech had the usual Part A and Part B. It has been the most disappointing Part A in recent years. We cannot recall Part A of the budget speech that was so totally bereft of any reform, not to speak of structural reforms. The most disappointed person must be the Chief Economic Advisor. The CEA had set the goal for India to become a $5 trillion economy and premised his entire argument on boosting private investment. There was no indication in the budget speech of any measures to attract greater private investment. The only investment-related proposal was to increase the FPI limit from 24% to the sectoral limit pertaining to the industry, if the investee company opts for the higher limit. We may point out that FPI is not FDI, and we are sure this is not the private investment that the CEA had in mind. In Part A, the FM took about 60 minutes to unveil her programs, which turned out to be mostly expansion of current programs and schemes. More rural roads, more electricity connections, more LPG connections, more toilets, more LED bulbs, more homes for the poor, more clusters for rural industries, and so on. She also assumed more responsibility for the central government for school education and college education. The Modi government treats India as one big state government and has taken upon itself the responsibility to do things that are the right and duty of state governments. This is not cooperative federalism. It is an unequal partnership imposed by the center upon state governments. Apparently, the Prime Minister believes that only he and his government can deliver basic public goods and services to the people. We disagree. We think that states have the capacity to deliver public goods and services, and it is not correct to reduce state governments to mere local administrations. Another grave infirmity in this approach is that the Modi government refuses to measure outcomes, refuses to take note of field reports, and refuses to correct the exaggerated claims of success. If we can pick any ideas in the budget speech that were interesting, It was the idea of a credit guarantee enhancement corporation and the idea of a nationwide gas grid and water grid. But there are no details whatsoever, and hence we cannot offer any comment. Altogether, the budget has been prepared without listening to the voices of either ordinary citizens or knowledgeable economists. The budget has also belied the modest expectations raised yesterday by the Economic Survey.
We'll have questions now. Anybody who can raise his hand, then I'll come to you one by one. We'll start with you, ma'am.
There's no reference to the direct taxes code. On the contrary, as I've mentioned in my statement, there are extensive amendments that are being made to the Income Tax Act, which means they are persisting with this Income Tax Act, and there is no indication that the direct taxes code will be enacted soon. Remember, there are 3 drafts of the direct taxes code, one updated upon the other, lying on the table of the finance minister of the BJP government for the last 5 years. And actually what they have done is extensively amend the Income Tax Act, increasing compliance burdens on the taxpayer and giving extraordinary powers to the tax collector, which we completely disagree with.
You, ma'am.
Last year, they lost revenues of about 1,60,000 crore. It is not acknowledged anywhere in the budget. In fact, even the budget at a glance does not acknowledge that number. But we know from the Controller of Government Accounts report that the revenues were lower by 1,60,000 crore. Now this year, again, they are making budget estimates for a rise in the tax revenues as well as the non-tax revenues. Obviously, at the moment, I have no explanation of how these rises are justified. But clearly, the increase in the taxes on petrol and diesel, an increase in customs duties, is intended to shore up the revenues. But ordinarily, a finance minister will say that the ARM, the additional resource mobilization, will get me so many thousand crore. That statement is absent. So one has to sit down and calculate how much revenues they're going to raise. But the finance minister should have been upfront and said, my ARM is so many crores. I mean, I'm amazed that they don't have the transparency to disclose how much they are raising by these additional taxes. Show me any budget in the past where the ARM number has not been disclosed.
Ma'am.
Well, let's take one by one. The first question is about FDI. The only paragraph I noticed was FDI in companies is now limited to 24%. they're going to raise it to the sectoral limit for that industry, but gives the option to the investee company to say, no, I will stick to 24% in FPI. As I made in my statement, FPI is not FDI. Now, last year, FDI actually dipped over the previous year. Last year's FDI was about $44 billion or so, which is actually $44.37 billion, which was 1% less than the previous year. Therefore, I don't know how they're going to get FDI. She doesn't say anything about FDI except to say we are encouraging FDI. She has said something about relaxing the rules for single brand retail. Now, what rules are being relaxed? I mean, nothing is clear. This is one of the most opaque speeches. You can't make out what they are trying to do. These are short sentences which doesn't explain what they are trying to do. What is your second question? Is about cash transactions. Yes, this government is obsessed with people must use less cash. We must become a less cash economy. We have pointed out repeatedly that while we must promote a digitization, you cannot force people to use cash. And advanced economies still use a large amount of cash. Germany, for example, 80% of transactions are in cash. In countries like Australia and Canada, it's between 40 to 50% in cash. Now, what will happen is, not extensively, but what will happen is, people who want to use cash will shy away from putting it in a bank. They will just keep it at home. Or do some private money lending, where they can take back the cash at short notice. Well, what they have done is not a tax, it's a tax deduction. So to be adjusted against your ultimate tax liability. But I don't, while I agree that digitization must be promoted, any kind of forced use of cash is going to be counterproductive.
Sayedji.
Do you remember when Aadhaar was made compulsory for income tax assessees, we said, well, PAN is already there. Why do you want to make it Aadhaar? Now they are saying, Aadhaar is good enough, PAN is not necessary. What kind of a comedy is this? If PAN and Aadhaar serve the same purpose, if PAN is as good as Aadhaar and Aadhaar is as good as PAN, there was already PAN for income tax assessees. Why did you amend the Income Tax Act to compulsorily link Aadhaar with PAN? And now you're saying it's either Aadhaar or PAN. I mean, obviously, this government amends the law first and then thinks. If PAN and Aadhaar are equally efficient or equally good, then why did you make all this song and dance about linking Aadhaar with PAN? I mean, I can't understand. See, you can't hide it forever. Obviously, people will look at it in the evening, in the night, and find the numbers in that bulky budget documents. But for the large number of people who are listening to the speech, I mean, they are not getting these budget documents. MPs get it, officials get it, think tanks get it. I suppose you can buy a set of documents, but for the lakhs and lakhs of people who are listening to a budget speech, you don't tell them what the total expenditure of this government is, what the total revenue is, what the fiscal deficit is. What are you afraid of? Why are you keeping people in the dark? I mean, I will do research now tonight and wade through the document and find the number. But I couldn't find the number between, say, 1:15 and 4:30 because I had to prepare the statement. But I think it's unfair, it's unethical not to disclose these numbers in Parliament. Well, I understood the first question. The claim is that NPA has come down by 1 lakh. That's correct. A little over 10% has become a little over 8%. But please remember, in the 5 years of Modi 1.0 government, banks wrote off 5,55,603 crore rupees. Wrote off. So while the finance minister claimed that we have reduced NPA by 1 lakh crore, she should have also said in the same period banks have written off rupees 5,55,603 crore. Why didn't she say that? I don't know. What is the second question?
The second
question. Oh, she brought a file. Yeah, but take it from me, a Congress finance minister will in future bring an iPad.
सर आज तक कभी बजट में ऐसा देखा नहीं गया कि डिफेंस रिलेटेड टॉपिक्स को शुरुआत से लेकर के अंत तक डिस्कस ना किया गया हो। इस बजट में सिर्फ एक चीज का जिक्र था डिफेंस से रिलेटेड कि डिफेंस रिलेटेड प्रोक्यूरमेंट्स अगर होते हैं बाहर से इंपोर्ट किए जाते हैं तो उसमें छूट मिलेगी, लेकिन एग्जैक्टली डिफेंस रिलेटेड कुछ बातें हैं नहीं इस बजट में। उसको लेकर क्या?
Yeah, I don't even know what is the allocation for defense. Unless one of you knows it. I will know by tonight or tomorrow when I go through the expenditure budget. But you don't even tell the country what is the allocation for defense. Was it more than last year or less than last year? If it is more than last year, what is the increase in percentage? You don't even say that. This is the most opaque budget speech I've come across. I think it's very unfair to the people of India. I'll put it that way. It's very unfair to the people of India. You don't tell them what is the allocation for defense. What is the allocation for midday meal? What is the allocation for Maganrega? Please remember, there are thousands and millions of people waiting to know whether their concerns, their interests are being taken care of.
Sarda Bahadur. I'll come to you Bhaiya after this.
I have got that deficit figure also. It isn't budget at a glance. The point I'm making is the lakhs and lakhs of people who are listening to the budget speech don't have the budget at a glance document. So you should have told them the deficit is going to be 3.3. Last year it was 3.4. I'm reducing it by 0.1 at 3.3. Since last year's number turned out to be not credible, they lost revenues of 1,60,000 crore. This year's number is at the moment not credible. Unless I go through the revenue receipts document and satisfy myself that these revenues are indeed realizable, and then I go through the expenditure statement and satisfy myself that these expenditures are indeed credible numbers, how can I pronounce on whether 3.3 is credible or not? Going by last year's experience, 3.3 is not credible.
I'll come to you. Shahid Bhai.
What has the finance minister said about agriculture? Very little. So what can I say about something which she has not said? I mean, usually there is a paragraph on agriculture which will go a long way to assuage the apprehensions of farmers. Please remember, agriculture growth rate has declined. Have you seen that graph in the economic survey? See the graph in the economic survey. It started at about 5%, comes down to 2.9%. Now, last year ended with 2.9%. How are you going to raise the graph from 2.9 to 4? There must be a paragraph which explains that. There's nothing in the budget speech which deals with how you're going to reverse the slide in agriculture. Well, every budget is for a new India. Next year is newer than the last year. Every year is a new year. So you don't write a budget for the previous year. I mean, this new India is one of the, 143rd slogan or something of this government. How many slogans have they had since Achhe Din? So new India has become the new slogan now. But all slogans in this government have a shelf life about 3 or 4 months. They will come up with another slogan. We'll see. What does he want? Oh, please.
आदरणीय साथी, गांव, गरीब, किसान, युवा 2019 के बजट में थोथे शब्द बन गए हैं। जिस प्रकार से 2 रुपये का अतिरिक्त बोझ पेट्रोल और डीजल पर अतिरिक्त कर लगाकर और उसमें 65 पैसा और जोड़ दीजिए जो लोकल टैक्सेस का है, 2 रुपया 65 पैसे का अतिरिक्त बोझ आम जनमानस के ऊपर पहले ही बजट में मोदी 2.0 सरकार ने लादा है, उसकी चर्चा चिदम्बरम साहब ने की। मैं ये भी याद दिलाऊं कि पिछले 5 वर्ष में 12 बार डीजल पर 447% एक्साइज ड्यूटी बढ़ाकर और 211% पेट्रोल पर एक्साइज ड्यूटी बढ़ाकर 5 वर्ष में जनता की जेब से 13 लाख करोड़ पेट्रोल डीजल से मोदी सरकार 1.0 ने निकाले और अब फिर 2 रुपया 65 पैसे का अतिरिक्त बोझ लाद कर आज जनता को लूटने की नई तैयारी शुरू कर दी है। क्या ये न्यू इंडिया है? क्या ये न्यू इंडिया है जिस बजट में रोजगार के सृजन की बात ही ना हो? क्या ये न्यू इंडिया है जहां गांव, गरीब, किसान की आय दुगनी करने या न्यूनतम समर्थन मूल्य की चर्चा ही ना हो? इसीलिए श्री पी चिदम्बरम जी ने यह कहा कि यह पूरा बजट दिशाहीन है और एक तरह से आंकड़ों को छुपाने की अनर्गल कोशिश है।
We are registering our protest here. We have protested in the past, but as I said on one occasion, what can people do? Every morning, somebody has to go to work, somebody has to take his tractor to the farm, somebody has to take his truck to ferry goods. They grumble, pay the extra amount and put the petrol or the diesel in their vehicle. They grumble. But what else can people do? As a political party, we are articulating the disappointment and disgruntlement among the people that this kind of exploitative taxation on petroleum products is unacceptable. Look at the economic survey. The economic survey says petrol prices have softened and this is good news. The whole section is there. And that was yesterday. And today you raise petrol and diesel prices by over 2 rupees. So obviously the persons who are thinking in this government are thinking in one direction. The persons who are acting in this government are acting in a different direction.
Ma'am.
See, if you want to tax the very rich, well, that can't be found fault with. But it's not clear whether the surcharge is being increased from 3% to 7% or is being increased by 7%. One has to read the finance bill, because the language of the finance minister's speech is not at all clear. It says from 2 to 5 crore and above 5 crore, the effective tax rate will be increased by 3% and 7%. So it's not clear. So either the effective tax rate if the effective tax rate is being increased by 7%, that's a whopping increase. If it's being increased to 7%, that's still a big increase of 4%. But they should also disclose how many people have an income of over 5 crore and how many people have an income between 2 and 5 crore. The number can't be more than a few thousands. So you're not going to get much revenue there, but this is all right for a platform to stand up and say, I have taxed the rich.
You wanted to ask some. Sanjay, I'll come to you after him.
How much for minorities? Yeah, you're perhaps right. I don't have the number because nothing is mentioned here. And one has to now look into the expenditure document to find out how much is being allocated for each ministry. The budget at a glance has some numbers. If only 4,000 odd crore has been allotted to the minority ministry, I mean, I think this is hardly sufficient, especially if you're serious about uplifting the minorities. This is hardly sufficient. But again, I can't comment on the number unless I go through the numbers, and I have not had the time to look at ministry-wise or program-wise allocation.
संजय है, और वैसे भी दोस्त ये पैसे से ज़्यादा इच्छा शक्ति का प्रश्न है, और हमको मालूम है कि अल्पसंख्यक वर्ग हों या दलित हों या आदिवासी हों, उनके लिए मोदी सरकार की दुर्भावना किस प्रकार की है.
So I think, see, if you have read Arvind Panagariya, who wrote a column a few days ago, if you have read the economic survey, it's clear that while the economists advising this government are advocating structural reforms, radical structural reforms, those in government don't believe in radical structural reforms. In fact, I think they are incremental reformists rather than radical reformers. I think Mr. Modi is happy to do incremental reform. He is not willing to bite the bullet and do structural reforms. Let me give you one example. There's a sentence in the finance minister's speech which is amusing. It says that the Agricultural Produce Marketing Cooperatives APMC Act should not hamper farmers from getting a fair price for their produce. Now what does this mean? Everybody knows APMC Act is a hindrance. So we have recommended, our manifesto said, we will repeal that act. Now Mr. Modi should say APMC Act will be repealed. Instead of that he says APMC Act should not hamper farmers. But it is hampering farmers. He's an incremental reformer, not a radical reformer in the mold of a Dr. Manmohan Singh. But we are doing budget only today.
This is a press conference specific to it, so we'll answer it later. Supriya.
I've read that sentence and I want you to read it carefully. It is codifying the current laws into 4 codes. They're not saying they're going to amend the labor laws or reform the labor laws. The word reform does not occur there. The word amend does not occur there. It's codifying it into 4 codes. So let's see the code. Codifying is bringing allied acts, related acts in one book. But that's not the same as reforming the laws or amending the laws. And the economic survey says we must do labor law reforms. Okay, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. What?
No, this is a specific press conference on budget, so kindly ask
Randeep.
your question later.
What is it? Working committee?